Good day and welcome to the Grovation Agri IT Benchmark Results Release event. This 2021 event is brought to you by Grovation in partnership with CISPRO. My name is Mbali Nwoko, your MC for the day. We have a great list of speakers lined up and of course the release of the 2021 Agri IT Benchmark report. If you have any questions around the platform and you want to maybe chat to the team, please reach out to the Grovation team whose details will be appearing on your screen right now. Our first speaker today is Deirdre Fryer, and she's Head of Solutions for CISPRO Africa. And she's here to tell us about the future of ERP in an IoT world. Where does ERP fit in? Deirdre, can you tell us more about it?
Thank you, Mbali, and welcome everyone. We're very excited to be part of this event with the Grovation team and really looking forward to the benchmark results. It's great to have everyone on the call, and as CISPRO is the gold sponsor, we're so excited to be talking IT in a very, I suppose what one thinks is a non-IT industry of agriculture. So hopefully looking forward to sharing some great insights over the next couple of hours, looking forward to the different speakers and really just evolving how IT is moving into this space. Like all things, I think we've been through so much change. Even pre-pandemic, there was a lot happening in the world. The pandemic has accelerated a lot of this. And so we are seeing a lot of change. And to deal with this change, very often we need to look to technology. But before I jump into just where technology fits in and where IT comes into play, I think it's always very observant to just take that step back and also just see how the industry has changed. And in preparing for today's keynote, I really thought about the agricultural industry, and as an industry itself, it has gone through a lot of evolution, a lot of change actually. And I found this picture that was so nicely represented by Primal Group. And if you go back all the way through to 9000 BC, farming was very different. Fast forward a few years to the 18th and 19th century, we started seeing a little bit of industrialization. We now have tractors and engines came into the farming space. And fast forward to today, and we now talk about this thing called sustainable agriculture. The farming world has definitely changed. Agriculture has definitely evolved. And I mean, to the point that even now, we don't just learn to farm, we actually go and study. We go to university, we actually get degrees around this. And that really just talks to how the industry itself has evolved. And when we do evolve, we're going at a much more complexity rate. And we sometimes, very often then find that IT has to come into play. How do we handle this complexity? How do we handle precision agriculture and sustainable agriculture without the enablers of technology? And I think that's really the theme of today's event. It's just where does the world of agriculture and IT come together and how do they benefit each other? What does that partnership look like? So when we think about the agricultural space, we are talking about supplying food faster. Our demand is higher than ever before. Our populations are growing. People need food. So how do we supply that food faster? How do we do it more cost effectively? We've got to bring that cost element down. And how do we do that efficiently and still make sure we're keeping our profitability measurements in play? And then on top of everyone's mind, how do we do it safer than ever before? Because this really does come to the heart of the consumer. Are we being safe in what we're doing? And so on that consumer note, it's one of those things we have to also embrace is that we are now dealing with a hyper-connected consumer. Our consumers who are utilizing the products that are being provided are very much, society has got this focus of healthy living. Society is very much pushing for ethical living. It is really looking on top of all of that to really have an experience with food. And so really it drives what we call a connected consumer. And when we've got the pressures of society really telling us as an industry what they anticipate from us, it puts another complexity layer into everything we're doing. Not only have we evolved in the way we are doing things, but now we've also really got to be responsible to our end consumer as well. And so this hyper-connected customer really does start to bring a whole new element into our world. And to manage all of that, we can't forget this wonderful thing called traceability. When we talk food security, when we talk about how we've got to really be able to engage with a consumer that even on the agriculture space, we must probably never interact with because they're so far down our supply chain, but they anticipate that traceability comes all the way back. So when we come into this traceability world, we need to know who, when, where, what, and how many. Where did it come from? Where did it source? And how has it evolved and changed? And how many hands has it touched? And is it safe? Has it been at the right temperatures? Am I getting a good quality product? And so this world of traceability is also something that we just have to so manage in this complexity of our industry. And so we come back to a very common term now called farm to fork. Food security and traceability is all about the tracking of that food from the farm all the way to the fork, which allows us to have this end-to-end life cycle monitoring. And so we now start to talk this term of what does my whole chain traceability look like? How do I look at this across my entire supply chain? And it seems simple when we say it. Well, how difficult can it be? We know who all the players are, but that's the reality is there's many players. There's many players in the supply chain, and it introduces challenges that we need to overcome because it's all about the supply chain. We need to be able to get multi-businesses, multi-organizations, multi-stakeholders trusted along that supply chain, talking along that supply chain, collaborating along that supply chain. And that in essence in itself is not an easy feat. You know, it's always one of those things. If you talk to someone, I think from many years ago, and you say, well, put your money in a bank, they go, why? They don't, we had to learn to trust banks. We had to learn to give our money to banks and trust that they would keep it safe for us. And this whole chain traceability, we've got those same sorts of challenges. We have to trust the engagement. We have to trust the partnership along that chain. And this is really in itself part of the biggest hurdle. So we have got challenges to overcome. But with challenge, I think we also have to consider that we have opportunity as well. And if I'd said to you most probably 10 years back that this is where the industry is going, and we had a workshop and a round session and everyone was saying, yes, we need to head there, but we can never do it. There were some obvious reasonings most probably. Everyone kind of would have said, well, in order to get this improved, in order to get closer to the precision of tracking from source all the way in the ground through to the end consumer, well, we can't do it with paper. We need it to be able to be mobile. We need it to be able to collect in the farm. How do we do that? And we now see that collection at source becoming a key factor in this chain. How do we get the data closer to source? Traditionally, what we would have seen is in the farm, a lot of the work and efforts would have been done. For example, if we were at harvest, we would harvest out, we'd put it on our trucks, it would come back to storage, and then we would capture everything in a back-end system. Then we would feed everything into an application. And what we really want to do is actually at the time of collection, that's when we want it to happen. So everyone goes, but you can't do that. We don't have connectivity. And I don't know, I'm kind of now sitting in a world of 2021, and I can't do anything not being connected. It's actually almost impossible to not be in a connected space. And I think that's the beauty of also how our environment, how our economy has transformed, is because we are sitting in a much, much more connected world. 10 years ago, being able to get that connectivity at that source would have been a near impossibility. But we've now got Wi-Fi's and satellites and so many ways to bring connectivity into rural areas or remote areas that is almost becoming a non-negotiable. that we cannot ignore anymore. We've also got a need to do unmanned data. So unmanned data is really just where the IoT stack starts to come into play. I can't have someone standing in a field all day, checking the temperature, seeing what water and rainfall is happening, or chemicals that are going into the soil. Ideally, what I just want is I want a sensor. I want a sensor in the ground. I want a sensor in the field in multiple locations that can gather that for me constantly and allow me to actually use that data to feed back into algorithms and understanding of what's happening in the field for two reasons. One is downstream ownership and traceability of what has gone into the product, but also for responsiveness. Is there something I need to change? Is there something I need to fix? Is there something I need to add to the soil, provide nutrients? So it's a twofold benefit to be able to have this insight from this unmanned data. Multiple systems and multiple organizations. The supply chain is big. There's many different players. Everyone wants a piece of the pie. Everyone's involved in the piece of the pie. And how do we share that information across each other? How do we share it across that supply chain and yet still trust that we as a business, as individuals, are safe with our data? We are not exposing ourselves. And this, I think, is sometimes one of the biggest hurdles to overcome, is getting that supply chain to collaborate in a sense of trust. And that really does bring the security transaction, a security conversation. How do we create a collaborative space that everyone feels secure in, that everyone does trust? And security really does become the key element here. And then I always like to say to people, we go through all this hard effort. We bring all these things together. We want to achieve all of this, but then we do nothing with it. And this is really where data and business intelligence comes into it, because we want to make a difference. We want to add value to this process. It's not just about being able to say, oh, well, here we go, this is where it came from, but it's also about knowing how we can improve. If we go back to the first slide, remember, what are we trying to do? Get food faster, more cost effectively, and safer. And so data allows us to see that. When we can start to look at all our data points and our information and our insights, that's when we can really start to drive improvements along any side of the process. So these are a lot of the challenges when we talk about this, what seems like a simple concept of whole chain traceability, really has a lot of individual elements that one has to be mindful of that needs to be achieved. So where does ERP fit in this whole space? Why would a vendor like CISPRO be wanting to talk at an agricultural event in an IT space? And I think it really just talks down to business. Businesses need business systems to enable them to effectively and efficiently run their businesses. And in essence, that's what an ERP system is. An ERP system allows us to manage our product. It allows us to trace our product, give it uniqueness, have an identification along its life cycle. And in doing so, manage our costs as well as our profits and our revenue and our teams and really the effort that goes into it, all the way from sourcing through to production, through to sales, through to delivery. An ERP is designed to bring that all together and then ultimately allow us to see that in our financial system or our financial stack so that we are then able to see the health of the business. So ERP is a really important foundation of this whole chain. And what it really needs to do now is allow the extension to the ecosystem. So traditionally, one would have hoped that why can't we have a single ERP vendor across this chain? Well, there's an old adage saying that I also love is don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? And I think when you've got many stakeholders across a supply chain, not everyone's going to run the same system. Not everyone's going to use the same tool set. And when we want to try and now achieve integration across that chain, well, we need to accept that we need to start becoming collaborative. Your ecosystem needs collaboration in order for us to support that whole chain traceability. So in this sense, for us as ERP vendors, for business applications, we are very much aware that we've got to drive this world of collaborativeness. We have to support a collaborative ecosystem for the benefit of not only ourselves, but our customers as well, and industry too, so that we can achieve the value that traceability and whole chain supply chains can achieve. In order to do this, because we also want to start to bring data to source, we don't want to shift and wait for everything to come in from the farm and then capture into a back-end system. We should pretty much be able to do that at the source, as close to the source as possible. So the ability to be able to use IoT devices, to use sensors, to allow that to drive data into the business application so that we can then transact with it is ever more present. And that's why it's really important that as ERP providers, as CISPRO, what we are really trying to focus on is that we've got that capability to do that connectivity with those devices. It doesn't mean we own those devices. We don't want to be responsible for those devices, but we've got to be prepared to partnership and really make that partnership available for our customers. Data intelligence and insights. The world is becoming about data. Data is most definitely an asset, and it really can tell us so much about how to improve, how well we're performing, and give us insight as to what we can do to respond and really drive change. So as ERP vendors, we really need to consider and look at this thought of where does data come into play, and can we enable those insights for business? Added to that, we've then got to consider the mobility. You know, I always think about the fact I'm sitting here, my smartwatch is busy beeping at me as I'm talking to you, telling me what's happening in my world. And there's no reason we shouldn't be bringing that same mobility with our employees and allowing them to be mobile with data, with the business, with sharing of information, with transactioning. So we really need to make sure that as close to source as we can, we're also allowing employees and people to be mobile with business. We've got this big concept of cloud and subscription services. I think for many people, you know, sometimes when you talk needing systems and applications and we want to create this platform and we're all going to interconnect, and then you just mention the word server and everyone goes, no, my smartphone's complicated enough. Don't talk to me about that. And I think this is really where the birth of and the value of cloud and subscription services comes in. It allows us to still leverage the benefits of systems and the capabilities of systems, but not have to worry about maintaining them and taking care of them and having an IT degree as well. We really can put our applications in the hands of the experts and allow that to drive the value that we need and really allow us to continue what you want to continue doing, and that is business and farming. The next element we have to consider is trusted connectors. As we aim for whole chain traceability and integrated supply chains, it really is the onus on the vendors like CISPRO to ensure that when we need to share data across organizations, across applications, when we provide those connectors in order to do that, to create those integration layers, that data is trusted and it's protected. So really a key element for us to really achieve success in this chain is about trust, building that element of trust and securing that trust along the chain. And this really then naturally talks into what we call the ability for us as ERP vendors to really be able to support blockchain at the end of the day. Blockchain is really going to be that end stream that allows us to securely transact, whether it be with data or payments across the chain, that will keep everyone safe and the whole cycle anonymous, but only to the relevance that is needed. And this is really what the end goal needs to be. And so for us as an ERP, we still believe we need to be at the foundation of this platform, of this ecosystem. But it's also really up to us, vendors like CISPRO, to make sure that we are supporting the capabilities and supporting the needs that are required in order for us to achieve this dream and this really next step of evolution in the agricultural space. So on that note, I just want to thank everyone for their time. It has been great being on this event, and I really am looking forward to the next speakers. I hope you are all as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing those Grovation results. If anyone is looking for the breakaways, feel free to come and join us on that session as well. We will talk a little bit more about the evolution of automation, but enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. Next up is Andre Oosthuizen, who is the IT executive for Westphalia Group, and he's joined by Sarel Visser, who is the CEO of Grovation. The gentlemen are here to talk to us about how we could use IT in our agribusinesses to make better management decisions. I must add, though, that Andre is based in Texas, USA, and he's joining us through a broadcasted Teams call. Sarel, over to you guys.
Okay, so thanks, Mbali, for the introduction. Andre, thanks for being with us today. It's a big, big pleasure. You and I go way back to the PwC days when you ran the Exodia practice from an operational point of view. And I mean, agri was really a big focus. And I know you know all of the pains that goes with implementing systems in the agri space. And today you're the executive of IT in the Westphalia group. And yeah, so welcome and nice to have you here. And maybe you can just share a little bit more about the Westphalia group and what you guys do, and just so the audience can get a little bit of exposure to that.
Well, Sorrel, thank you, and thank you for the invitation of being here today. And yeah, you're quite right. A few decades in putting in technology systems in agri has obviously left me with not a lot of hair. So I have my stripes and I've learned my lessons. But you know, we love the industry, all of us, and it's what feeds the world. And this is why we all enjoy being in the agricultural world. And yes, I am part of the Westphalia group now. Westphalia is a global multinational. We're operating in 15 different countries, 5 continents at the moment. And we grow and distribute 23 different types of fruit. But primarily, we are in the avocado industry, biggest in the industry globally. And we grow primarily avocados in the southern hemisphere across a number of different countries, which we then export across into the northern hemisphere, across Europe, where we are one of the biggest players. So, yep, when we come to applying technology, ours is right from the so-called farm to fork, or you know, pip to plate, whichever acronym you like to use. But that's the world that we're playing in at the moment.
Well, it's such a privilege to have such a big agri company on our main stage today. So, Andre, today I want to discuss 2 topics with you, or you and I are going to discuss 2 topics, and hope the audience is going to enjoy that. So the first topic that we're going to discuss is how agri have to follow in the footsteps of some of the other industries like manufacturing and the services industry, who has really successfully applied technology to drive down costs and to increase their ability to manage more with less people. So that's the one topic. And the other topic is, in your view, how can the agri industry apply technology to reduce the pain that's associated with growth and consolidation, which is currently one of the biggest themes or trends in the agri sector? So maybe let's start with the first topic. So in your view, some of the other industries, manufacturing has really been able to successfully apply technology to drive down unit costs and to increase productivity. If you similarly look to the service industry, they've been really successful at applying technology in a way that enables them to employ more people without increasing the number of management staff that they actually have to employ. So let's just talk. What is your views? What can the agri sector do? What should they be doing? And yeah, share your wisdom with us.
Yeah, the agricultural industry, it definitely has its unique set of challenges. And I think starting off, let's state the obvious for the audience. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have in manufacturing or in the agricultural industry is, in all manufacturing, you have a simple bunch of chemicals, steel, whatever, arriving at a factory. It's a very controlled environment. It's a very controlled process. You apply your lean manufacturing or whatever type of process you do, and you end up with a product. It's very easy to control. It's very easy to control your inputs and your outputs, and everything is very static. And it's a beautiful, as we know in the project management world, it's a lovely little waterfall type of a process. But now we come to organics and we come to the agriculture industry. It is everything but. We grow fruit in orchards. It's controlled by weather. God decides when that fruit's going to come off the tree. We have very little control over that. Yes, there are lots of things we can apply in the agricultural industry, and we'll talk a little bit about the technology. But as we all know in this business, yes, the fundamental problem is that most of what we do is not controlled like it is controlled in a traditional manufacturing. So when you come to applying technology in this industry, it comes with a unique set of challenges, and that is you can't just put a little IoT sensor on the front of a conveyor belt in a factory. It doesn't quite work. You're sticking an IoT device in the middle of a tree in an avocado orchard. It just doesn't work. So you have to think totally out of the box. And I think probably one of the biggest challenges that we see, or biggest core areas that we see inside the agriculture industry is that we're trying to improve is not necessarily around the efficiency so much. We're trying to improve yields. And now for those who aren't in agri, that's what we talk, the term we use to how much fruit we're actually getting off the actual tree. We're trying to reduce wastage because contrary to popular belief, wastage is probably our biggest area that we can improve on. And then, of course, we all talk about ESG or environmental and social governance. ESG is the latest buzzword for the socioeconomic side and sustainability. But those are the three core areas that we really should be focusing on inside agricultural. So the first mindset change, if you think of the topic you just mentioned, everyone sort of thinks about applying technology, robotics, IoT, these type of things, all to do the same process but do it more efficiently. You can't really think like that. You're working with a soft fruit. You're not working with a piece of steel. And applying the traditional way of thinking in technology to soft fruit, you're just going to end up with more wastage. You're not going to end up with better fruit. And it's controlling those three areas that, we can dive a little bit into how we apply technology in those three areas a little bit. But I think the first message I want to get across today is this is not traditional manufacturing. This is around trying to apply technology to improve and get better control over things that are generally not under your control in the first place.
I think you've said a lot in there, and I 100% agree with you that the agri space have its unique challenges. But I also think that there's a lot of clever people out there these days, and we're seeing more and more of these specialized solutions coming to the market. Maybe you can just talk about how you guys integrate. I know integration is one of your main responsibilities within the group, and how do you integrate all of these specialized software solutions that are trying to solve some of these unique problems? Because there are solutions. It's not similar to some of the other industries, but I can see a mountain of new technology being released annually to the agri space. And just maybe talk to us about how you guys make use of that and how you exploit some of those benefits that come with it.
Sure. So let's understand again. Let's look at the entire supply chain, because the question you ask is a little tricky because it's very varied. You have your orchards, and even the establishments of the orchards is a discussion on its own. But you have orchards, you have fruit that comes off, it goes into your pack houses, and then from your pack houses, obviously you're now distributing to wherever you go, and then you have a consumer on the other end. Those key areas are approached very differently, and that's the first trick. And you ask about how do we integrate that? Well, let's look at the four areas individually. So firstly, in the orchards, you have key areas that you need to watch inside the orchards. It's everything. We'll talk about water as the big sustainability one, which is an absolutely crucial one. But controlling water in your environmental areas is one of the easier areas that is being looked at now at the moment. Everything from drip irrigation, which cuts water consumption down 40-45% across your orchards. Things like controlling your yields, monitoring yields. That's where technology applies inside the orchard. Because if you can understand what your area is, what your yield is per area inside your orchard, for the first time in history, we can start asking questions why. One of the worst statements I find in meetings all the time is people tell me, well, we've done it like this for 50 years or 70 years or whatever the case might be. Yes, that might be, but we all know that that doesn't mean to say that it is still right. Technology has moved on, the world has moved on, and the requirements have moved on. So looking at an orchard, the days of us just pumping every river dry, those are over. We have to farm and we have to apply technology inside an orchard where we can track everything from the water consumption, the yields per area, so that we can ask those questions why. And then you ask about integrations. Now we move that fruit all the way along into a pack house. Most people just immediately think, well, you just load it up into a tractor and you take it to a pack house. Let's not forget who the consumer is on the other end of the line. And this is why I'm going to jump right to the end, because the end determines the beginning. And the problem that we have, or the beauty that we have, let's not call it a problem, is our biggest consumer, especially in the avocado industry these days, is actually your millennials and your Gen Xers, your Generation Xers. That's a very different person to us old gray-haired guys. We used to just take the water, grow a fruit, and put it on the shelf. The millennials do not think like this. They want to know, what chemicals have you used? Where does that fruit come from? Is the grower being properly paid for that fruit? They are socially aware, social media aware. Social media is often in our IT world, we wonder if it's our worst enemy or our best friend, because it could swing either way depending on what's being done on social media. But your millennial on the other end, and I'm meaning this in a positive sense, is one of the most educated consumers that we have ever seen in the history of agriculture. So when they look at a fruit inside a store or a shop, and they want to understand the history behind that, and they want to make sure that's organic, they want to make sure it's good quality, and as I said, all the points going all the way back to our grower. So again, your question was, how do we integrate all of these? Well, there lies a challenge, because generally speaking, the industry has been segmented in the past, which means that your growers, your pack houses, your distributors, your shippers, your big retail outlets are all different companies. That doesn't help anymore, because the problem is the consumer. Remember, I'm going to keep referring back to our millennial. He says, no, I want to understand that whole chain all the way right back to the orchard. The fact that you're shipping fruit from all over the southern hemisphere, very often the best growing areas are third world countries. They have the best labor, they have the best soil conditions, and generally have the best weather conditions. So when your consumer who's sitting in London and as a millennial, or in the US or whatever, he wants to understand where that fruit comes from, best your technology is integrated, and best your technology is strong enough to provide him or her the answers to where does this fruit come from, how was it grown, how was its sustainability grown. So the days of just worrying about, is the quality okay, and getting that fruit onto the shelf, those are no longer the key requirements. We need to track all of that all the way through. How do we integrate this? Well, again, here's the problem, and I keep coming back to your question because it's an interesting one. Most companies do not control the entire supply chain, which means that they are one or other parts of that. But data sharing is becoming the norm, whether that's under the sustainability side, whether that's under the quality side. These days, with things like Global Gap is just one of the quality control organizations, one of the bigger ones. They're starting to insist, and quite rightly require, certain metrics be published to them, so that the consumer on the other end, when you walk into a store, in South Africa, we all walk into a Woolworths. When you pick up that avocado, you have the right, both legally and otherwise, to know what the source and where the origin of that fruit is. You have the right under the organic label to know, to have that guarantee that certain minimums were actually achieved to get that label of being organic. So how do we share that data? Well, there lies the big question. As I said, cloud has become one of the big enablers to being able to share that. Unfortunately, with a lot of integration comes a lot of the hacking that's going on at the moment, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. And it is a challenge. The good news is this, that everybody recognizes this. And in the industry, what we're seeing is that a lot of the elements inside that supply chain are starting to work together. We see that with all of the various elements that we work with, because everybody understands if they don't contribute to that quality and that ESG across that entire supply chain, it's not going to function properly, which means that your millennials are going to buy your fruit. And then you have a problem. So integrating all of the different elements, all the way from the farm around what that farm's doing, what the pack house is doing, what the shipping company is doing, and what that distributor is doing to that fruit. That's what the key comes down to, is how are we going to share that data? And the answers aren't very apparent, because most companies like us, we really control that whole supply chain to almost an entire degree. So we have the benefit of being able to integrate our systems and integrate the data. Things like blockchain are starting to appear with the shipping companies, so we're starting to integrate that into their areas. That's just one part. As I said, the millennials are after the quality. They're after the sustainability and the ESG requirements. So that's what the core to this whole requirement actually is.
We are seeing that the end user of the fruit and vegetables and even proteins that we produce on farms, they are more educated than ever, and satisfying them are not going to get easier. It's going to get more complex, and maybe we can talk about the second topic, because it latches onto this, the value chain integration and consolidation that we see happening in the agri sector. I mean, if we look at Westphalia, you just mentioned now that you control that value chain to a large degree. And we're seeing more and more of the big agri businesses doing something similar, either going bigger or integrating into the value chain. Now, both you and I know that bigger businesses come with more pain. That's just the reality. And one of the big pains, unfortunately, is more people. So yes, we want to employ more people and we want to create more job opportunities, but if the more people you have, the more management level staff you need to have. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of challenges that comes with it: more data points, more systems, more geographical locations. I mean, it just adds up. So let's talk a little bit about your experience, how technology have helped you guys to overcome some of these pains, and yeah, then we can maybe share some of the ideas that you have, because I know you have a lot of ideas around what can still be done.
Oh yeah, we in the agri industry, we in the infancy still. That's absolutely fact. So I think let's take your first point around vertical integration, and that is definitely happening. I've been talking a little bit about the supply chain around that vertical integration, and there's no doubt about it that is busy happening globally. The good news globally is that the market is increasing. So very often when you talk about consolidation, people have a negative connotation to that if, the bigger companies are buying up everybody. That is not the case at all. What we were working towards, and that's ourselves and even our competitors, we often work together on this, is actually creating awareness around the benefits of the products. Now, that's not the point that you asked about today, but it's a crucial point, that because what we're doing is we're actually growing the industry. We're tapping into what does our market want, which is on the millennials, and we're encouraging the per capita consumption of healthy type of foods, whether it's the proteins or the organics or whatever the case might be. But you're absolutely right. So here come the challenges. The problem with the millennial is they expect a certain quality 52 weeks of the year. The fact that a tree only grows a fruit, for a certain period of months a year, it yields those fruit, they don't care. They expect, every time I walk into a Woolworths, they expect to see an avocado lying on the shelf. And that's where it becomes extremely challenging. So when it comes to the vertical integration, you often have to now start watching from a technology perspective areas that we've never had to really concern ourselves with. If I go back 50 years, we just took the fruit off the trees and you put it on the shelf. Now suddenly that millennial saying, but I want it the whole year round. So now come the challenges in. Under the organic thing, you can't just take a fruit and freeze it, like you can do on certain other types of products. This is not, as I said, a manufacturing thing that we can just manufacture 12 months of the year, which now means we have to use technology to get clever about this, around where we're getting the fruit from which parts of the world, and supplying that into those locations that are looking for that fruit 52 weeks of the year. And that's where the technology really starts coming to play. People often think, your point earlier about other industries using technology to just get more efficient. That's great, but that's things like, as I said, robotics to do the same manual labor, but just do it quicker. That doesn't really apply to the same depth inside the agricultural industry. As I said, you're working with soft fruit. So robotics and robotic packing, yes, that is coming, but it's not the biggest area that we really need to focus on. When you talk about we want to employ more people, we do. But what we want to do is we want to be clever about it. So the part in the agri industry that are very manual, that will largely stay that manual. Things, like certain packing, yes, you can automate certain packaging, but you want to be very careful. Again, I'm talking generally because it depends on the types of fruit that we're talking about here. Some fruits are harder than others. I'll stick with the fruit industry for now. But now, as you're doing those processes, here come the technology challenges. Remember, I keep referring back to the organics and what our millennial customer wants. He wants to know what's happening all the way through that process. So technology has come along a long, long way from being able to create data. In the past, we literally had a guy on a bicycle. He would drive around in the orchard, have a good look at a tree, and decide, is the tree ready for picking? Well, that doesn't quite help anymore, because now remember, we're shipping fruit to the other side of the planet. We want to make sure what fruit's coming from where. So the guy on the bicycle that worked 60 years ago, as clever as what he was and walking around the orchard, no longer actually helps. Now we need to start capturing the data. And the beauty is a lot of data is now being generated. Tragically, I don't think that most data is used efficiently at all in the industry at this point in time, not nearly to the level that I've personally experienced in other industries, but it's getting there. That's the good news, is the manufacturers of farming equipment are definitely coming a long, long way. I mean, you get right up to the extremes like automated tractors now. So you don't even need a driver on a tractor. So now what happens to that driver? Well, let's apply that driver much more, he knows the fruit. So let's apply him in areas that is much more efficient than actually just driving a tractor. Will driverless tractors take over the world? Definitely not in the foreseeable future. So we still need those. But here comes the crux. You still, at the end of the day, have multiple growers that want to get the best fruit and the best price for their fruit sitting all over certain parts of the world. Then you have consumers sitting on the other side of the world that want to get the best quality fruit the whole year round. How do you match those two up? And this is where data, connectivity, cloud, internet, all of this type of thing is now starting to play a huge, huge part. Because generally your grower in the past is a farmer who knows his business, and your consumer on the other side knows nothing about the business, but he understands what fruit he wants to eat. So generating the data through that entire supply chain has become a critical part to the business. Controlling and sensitizing the data, and I'm referring to, obviously you don't want to give everything to everybody. That comes with certain risks, but you want to make sure that your farmer is looked after, and you want to make sure that right through the entire process that your consumer on the other side is getting the information he requires, and that it flows back and forth. So the beauty is, in the past, you go back 20 years, we didn't have connectivity. We didn't know what internet was, 30 years ago. Now we've already got, unfortunately, the problem with agriculture is it's generally in very remote areas. Again, one of the challenges of the agri industry is you're almost always working in remote areas. But the beauty is these days, connectivity, mesh networks, I can get into all sorts of tech type terms now, has come so far. Everything from our famous Elon Musk is already shooting up satellites to give us saturation across the world. That for the agriculture industry is going to be a huge win, because a lot of the problems we're having with tech in the agri industry at the moment, it needs connectivity. So consolidating those data points, cloud has come a long, long way and when I'm talking about cloud, I'm using that term generally. I should really use the term things like cloud data or data repositories or predictive analytics, AI, all these buzzwords we love to use as techies. We like to sound very clever half the time with all of these type of buzzwords. But jokes aside, at the end of the day, historically, those were out of reach for 99% of people. That's no longer the case. With your big cloud providers, your Amazons, your Microsofts, etc., IBM, Google, they are suddenly now providing the capability for the smaller farmers and for all the different parts in your supply chain to be able to supply data, and for that data actually now to be economically manipulated. When I talk about that is you no longer need these rooms full of servers like what you and I we talked about when we started today, going back 15, 20 years. You just plug it into the cloud. You no longer need this room full of clever engineers and technical people. You can just buy the services on the cloud now. I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but the point I'm making is that 100% problem is down to now like a 10 or 20% problem. So things like internet, cloud, connectivity, data analytics, AI, all these type of technology things have caused a revolution inside the agri industry. But it's also caused a huge problem. And the problem I'm referring to now is suddenly now farmers on the one side and consumers on the other side, especially the farmers, don't actually know what to do with all this data. We are generating data across the agri industry at astronomical rates, but now it's understanding what that data says. Yes, my millennial on the one hand, he knows what he wants to see from an organic perspective, but how do we filter and how do we control that data to provide what he needs and protect the farmer and everything the farmer is doing on the other side as well? Remember, the farmer could be our own farmers, it could be contracted farmers, it could be anybody. So the data is now being created, the integration is coming, and as I said, the tragic part to agricultural industry is half the time our farmers don't actually know, our agricultural companies don't know what to do with the data. That's the biggest frustration. The other big problem that we're seeing is that a lot of farmers don't even believe that it's required. They're still thinking, well, I can still walk around my orchard, have a look at my fruit, pick the fruit and send it off to a pack house, and that's good enough. That is no longer good enough. If your millennial doesn't get what he wants when he consumes that avocado or that fruit on the other side, he's not going to buy it. So the days are numbered where a farmer no longer could just say, well, the fruit looks good enough and I can put whatever chemicals I like on that tree or in the ground. Those days are gone. So the farmers that don't adopt technology to be able to control and to monitor what they are doing inside their orchards and that entire supply chain right through to the millennial will eventually end up losing that consumer on the other end, which means he has no market left. But the good news is, from what I'm seeing in the industry, everybody's waking up to this fact. Everybody's waking up that technology has a huge role to play inside the agri industry.
I think, Andre, one of the things that I can agree with you is that I think one of the biggest challenges is just the amount of data that will be generated, and that's already being generated in the agri industry. And it is actually sad to a point where I see that so little of the agri businesses, especially primary agri, are doing a serious effort at converting that data into proper decision-making support data or facts. And I can just see that BI solutions and data analytics solutions that are focused at the agri sector is just going to become more and more important. And unfortunately, yes, we can buy those things from the cloud and we can buy it as a service, and we don't have to employ all of those clever engineers and we don't have to buy all of the servers, but you still need to think like that. You still need to want to take that data and convert it into good decisions. And I think there's a bit of a challenge ahead for the agri industry, especially the primary agri, where they're a little bit behind when it comes to formulating proper BI and data analytics strategies for their businesses. They're still on a very tactical, operational level when it comes to working with that data. And I think in this decade, there will be significant shift within the industry, and the sector or the businesses in the sector that do not consider these solutions will just start to fall behind, because like you said, the millennial will just stop buying their product. And the problem with any of the products that we produce, or the majority of the products we produce in the agri space, is that they have a short shelf life. So you can't after producing it go back and correct and resell. It's not metal, it's not coal or iron ore or any of those products that have a long shelf life. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next decade in terms of this. So Andre, I think you mentioned also that obviously there's a security risk that comes with all of this integration, and I know it was not part of the two topics that I wanted to discuss with you, but maybe just share some of your thoughts on it, because I know you have a lot of thoughts on the importance of the security side.
Yeah. Well, from a legal and a compliance perspective, the security question you ask actually is multifaceted. with regulations like GDPR that has now been published across Europe, or POPIA in South Africa, etc. And pretty much those type of regulations are global. You on one hand, you have the whole concern around privacy and the privacy of the data. And on the other hand, you have all the operational data, which is the one you referred to. So, cybercrime, and tragically, is is around. It's with us, and a lot of the frustration that I see in the industry is, it's one thing to protect your own data, but what we're not seeing is that people are not considering your third parties, and this is probably one of the biggest areas. The bigger companies like us, obviously, we have a cyber team, and we are very, very focused around protecting the data and protecting our, everything from our farmers to our distributors on the other end. But the problem that we're seeing with our third-party companies, and I mean, we've seen some sad examples not so long ago, in Europe. We saw them in South Africa with the whole ports authority that got shut down. So it's one thing protecting your data, but if you get your container to port and the ports are shut down because they've been ransomed, I mean, it's something that you're well aware of, I'm sure. That doesn't help. As you said, fruit has a certain shelf life. It can't sit in a container at a harbor for a month or two while everything from riots to ransomware gets resolved. These things have a huge impact on the fruit, and that means that fruit then has to often be destroyed or sent to a different market, which just chases the price up for everybody else. So there's no winners when it comes to cyber. There's only losers, well, besides the odd criminal or two, but the rest of us, we all pay the price. So, what am I seeing in the industry? Too little, definitely. Cyber is not getting enough attention from a lot of agricultural companies. Again, it's this mindset of, well, I'm second, third, fourth generation farmer, or whatever the case might be. Cyber attack's not going to happen on my tree. That might be true. The problem, as I said to you, is that your tree is no longer just a tree. Your tree is becoming an integrated data point in your supply chain. So you have to start protecting your data. And unless everybody starts understanding that you need to protect your data, you're either going to fall foul of one of the legal and compliance things or compliance regulations, or you're going to fall foul of cyber. And it's important, besides all the cyber protection things, very often it's the basics that aren't even there either. Now I'm referring to things like disaster recovery and business continuity, which has got, almost nothing to do with cyber. If you think about it, it's around something's happened, like the port authority. Well, how am I going to ship my container now? And it's horrifying to me when I talk to people in the industry and I say, well, how did you handle, the certain harbor being shut down? And they're like, well, we didn't quite know what to do. We got phone and our trucks were standing at the gate. Well, that's not good enough. And a lot of the time people think technology that we did this to ourselves. I mean, we often, IT people come along and think that the bigger and the more expensive a system, the better the solution is. That is not the case. Very often the solutions are actually a simple spreadsheet, and Excel is still one of the most best used tools in the agricultural industry, sad to say. But the challenge is, very often your CIOs like myself need to think a little bit differently. This is not around applying technology. This is just making sure that your operations stay operating. And your your operational people, when it comes to disaster recovery, they need to start thinking a little bit out of the box, as we've seen recently with things like the riots and with things like the ransomware that's going around. So what is my message to everybody regarding that is, you need to think about this. You need to think around, what am I going to do? Because this is a fact of life. This is not going to go away. Ransomware, phishing mails, all of these type of processes, all these type of hack attempts are yet to stay. And the more, unfortunately, as we've just been saying today, computers, IT, technology application in the agri industry is going to continue to grow. Well, all that means is that agri industry is going to become a bigger and bigger target. At the moment, we've, to a larger degree, been ignored because the agri industry, from a money perspective, isn't the same as sort of the banking industry, where they've been heavily hammered. But look at the price the banking industry has paid from a cyber perspective. Let's not wait for it to put us on our knees and cost us a lot of good product. Let's all work together and focus on getting the cyber stuff rolled out. Let's focus on thinking about the legislation, things like protecting our data. You asked a key point earlier around integrating and vertical integration. but that comes along with sharing of data. That immediately raises the risk. And again, these are some of the frightening things I've seen in the industry when I say ask people about this, and they say, "Oh no, that's fine. We've just integrated into this company and this distributor to that shipping company." And then I start asking cyber questions around encryption and all this. No, we didn't do any of that. And it's tragic because we all know about the Port Authority in South Africa. Do you know about how many companies downstream of that also got nailed at the same time? That didn't hit the news, but they would definitely happen, and they were there. So the tragedy is cyber needs to get a lot of attention as well, or it's going to hurt, at some point in time. It's an area that keeps all of us IT people awake at night because, it's always keeping one step ahead. You can never just sit back and say, well, I put my little firewall in, so that's good enough. That might have been 20 years ago. It's no longer the case. It's a constant thing. They're constantly trying to get in, and we're constantly trying to keep them out. So it's a tragic game that we all seem to be playing from a cyber perspective, but it needs to get a lot of attention, which it's not in generally speaking. Companies are, but generally speaking, not.
And now you make me worry, because if I look at the responses around POPI, the majority of people say they're just going to do it enough to comply. So I think the message that I'm hearing is that that's not going to be enough. They need to start looking more seriously into these things.
Absolutely. I mean, you can ask companies like British Airways how well that worked out for them. They paid a hefty price for that. And remember that the challenge in specifically South Africa with POPI is people generally think POPI means your personal data. So they immediately think of things like your HR type of data. Well, that's actually not correct. POPIA, if you talk to your legal people, actually includes company data now, because a company is seen as an entity under POPIA, which makes South Africa quite unique in that respect. So if your company data gets leaked and you hurt somebody, I'm talking one of your third parties or whatever the case might be, you're as liable as if you leak people's personal, medical data onto the internet. And that's a bit of a wake-up call for people that for companies that haven't actually had a good look at POPI.
Andre, before we scare the audience to death with all of this cyber talk, I want to really thank you for your time, and thank you for all of the wisdom that you've shared, and looking forward to have you on stage again.
So thank you for the time today, and let me not scare everybody. Let's leave this on a very good note. And the bottom line is, technology is here to help, and the bottom line is we need to apply technology, as you said, to give us proper data-driven decision making, to give us safe fruit, and obviously to protect our consumer. At the end of the day, that's the person that counts the most, is what are we putting into our bodies, i.e. what is our millennial going to eat? And the exciting part is, we talked a lot of the stuff today, but the exciting part is there's a lot of phenomenal technology coming down the line, stuff that really excites us from an IT perspective, and things that are really going to excite our consumers going forward. You're already seeing a lot of it on the shelves. From a technology perspective, little QR codes that you can scan and it shows you the whole blockchain. So technology is coming. It's already there, and I'm very excited because I definitely think that it can bring a lot of efficiencies and a lot of the improvement under the quality globally for us. So from an IT person, thank you, Sorrel, and I'm excited about what's coming.
Thank you, Andre, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Sorrel. Have a good conference. Bye.
Thank you so much to Andre and Sarel. Well, we're about to take a short break, and maybe you could use this time to grab a quick cup of coffee, and we'll be back with the report results.
Have you ever wondered how the icons and visionaries of our time have changed the world as you see it today? The answer is simple. It's about exploring the potential in every possibility while always moving forward, so that when preparation meets opportunity, you realize success that makes a real difference. And it all starts by simply saying yes to your next. Your next step as you expand into new geographies. Your next digital innovation leap transforming how your business operates, or your next product line that you deliver to the market. That's why at CISPRO, we are committed to enabling our customers to say yes to their next in securing a digital future, one where we win together. As a trusted advisor, this is what inspires and drives us to provide support and guidance at every step of the way to empower you, the manufacturers and distributors who are changing the world. We make things possible by putting you in the best place to get to your next. CISPRO, say yes to next.
Modern organizations depend heavily on an increasing array of apps, systems, and services to operate efficiently and grow their businesses. But sharing data between them is one of the biggest challenges facing IT today. Hand-coded point-to-point integrations are expensive to implement, non-sustainable and uneconomical to maintain, while the traditional enterprise service bus approach requires substantial upfront planning and results in an inflexible solution. Flowgear's internationally renowned platform enables organizations of all sizes to build powerful application, data, and API integrations, whether they're in the cloud or on-premise, all from a single interface. Using Flowgear's scalable platform, developers and non-technical users can easily create, edit, and manage enterprise-grade integrations for your business, your customers, and your suppliers in minutes, not months. Take advantage of our intuitive, code-free, drag-and-drop visual designer, which includes a comprehensive library of pre-built connectors and templates. Our cloud-based platform has already empowered scores of industry leaders to push through barriers by creating reusable workflows and automating time-consuming, repetitive processes. Increase your productivity and profitability while delivering customer excellence. Flowgear, enabling digital agility.
Welcome back. I hope you've been enjoying the session so far. Up next, we are joined by the Grovation team, and presenting the benchmark report results is Sarel Visser as well as Lida van Staden.
Thank you, Mbali, for the introduction, and thank you for everybody who has joined us today. This is quite an important initiative for us, and we believe that this will also become a significant initiative for the industry. Maybe a little bit of background around the initiative and where we've started and where we are going. The Agri IT Benchmark initiative have been designed with the aim to assist the C-suite management level with better decision making around their IT investment and strategies, which will enable them to better execute their business strategy. The benchmark findings and results will enable them to benchmark their strategies, their tactics, and their expenses in a way that will help them to justify the investment at a board level. Okay, let's get to the point why everybody have joined the event. The results and finding of the benchmark. The benchmark results have been aligned with the Grovation IT strategy framework. Please note, we're going to highlight some of the findings and results of the benchmark, not all of them. The full report will be available on our website, and you can go and pre-order your report now. The first findings we're going to discuss relates to the section of overall IT strategy. More than 70% of the participants indicated that they have a formally documented IT strategy. What was really alarming is the fact that less than 30% of them have their IT strategies fully aligned with the business strategy. This can really be an indication of the low maturity of the IT strategies deployed in the industry. It is promising to see that more than 70% of the participants indicated that they have a hosting strategy in place. What we find in practice is that some of these sub-strategies poses a challenge for the business. For example, most of the businesses talk about a cloud-first strategy, but then they have a perpetual licensing model which they prefer from a licensing point of view. And your IT strategy must determine which of these such sub-strategies overrides the other. Otherwise, you're going to have a contradicting strategy which will make it very difficult to execute. So one of the other sub-strategies that, in my view, requires more and more attention given the growth that we experience in the investment in technology and IT is our funding strategy. How do we fund IT? Now, if we look at the results, it is clear that there is no favorite recovery model currently deployed by the industry. But the discussion should not stop at recovery models. We should also have the discussion around on-balance sheet and off-balance sheet financing, and how we align the IT funding strategy with that of the business funding strategy. I've experienced that many companies have well-defined IT funding strategies, as well as well-defined business funding strategies, but that these two strategies contradict one another, making it very difficult for the board to make any clear decision around IT investment going forward. IT security strategy is one of the few areas where we've seen that the mandate of the strategy has been cascaded down even to a policy and procedure level. If we look at the data from the benchmark, more than 70% of the participants indicated that they have policies and procedures in place that enforces their strategy around security. We would really like to see more of this from a strategy point of view, and we want to see that all strategies are mandated and enforced by policies and procedures to make sure that it becomes the responsibility of the business to implement and execute the strategy. What's interesting is the fact that even though there's a lot of strategies in place around technology, they are at various levels of maturity and completeness. So there's, for instance, 80% of the participants say that they have a BI solution in place, but only 14% of them have a formally documented BI strategy. If you look at the ERP side, most of the
participants indicated, or a high number of the participants indicated that they have a best of breed strategy in place for the ERP. And if you then look at the in-house development or the buy versus build side, they're all operating on a hybrid model, or the majority of them are operating on a hybrid model. So that makes sense. There's a correlation between a big portion of them actually sitting on the ERP and the best of breed ERP strategy, but they are complementing the ERP with in-house developed solutions. If you look at the integration side, it is actually alarming because a very, very small number actually have a formal integration strategy. The challenge with that for me is that if you have a ERP, best of breed ERP strategy, integration is one of the biggest challenges that you will have to solve. The second biggest one is then reporting, and that's where BI comes in. You actually have to solve that problem from a reporting point of view. So if you go best of breed and you have multiple systems in your business, you have to solve the two biggest problems that comes with that. The one is integration, the other one is reporting. And if you look at this completeness of the strategies, they are not 100% complete. There's components of it in place, but there's still a long way to go to get a complete technology strategy in place for the majority of the participants. Okay, so the next portion of the findings is the IT costs. Probably one of the main reasons why people participate in the benchmark exercise. In our report, we have more metrics than what I'm going to discuss now, but I just want to highlight three of the main metrics that really stood out. The first one is total IT costs as a percentage of revenue, and given the data that we collected, the average was just over 1%. If you take that same total IT spent and you calculate it as a percentage of operating expense, it is just below 7%. Now, one of the key metrics that everybody wants to know is the cost per user. So it's very much in line with last year's costs and finding, and we're sitting at just around 63,000 Rand per year per user, which sounds very high, and I think that's why it's so important to make sure that your IT tools and infrastructure actually contributes to your employees' productivity. Otherwise, you invest more than 60,000 Rand a year into something that actually doesn't contribute. I think one of the other things that I want to highlight is that, yes, the financial metrics is quite important, but it is actually a result of your strategy. So if yours are not in line, it doesn't mean that you're wrong or right. It just means that you can use the metrics in the benchmark to determine if the outcomes that you want to achieve for your strategy is actually achievable and measurable. So don't be discouraged if your total IT spend is 2%, because maybe your strategy is to refresh all of your technology. The question is, are you able to do it cost effectively? Are you able to do it within reason? And are you getting bang for your buck? So I want to invite you to go and read the report, because there's a lot to be said around these metrics, and I'm not going to have enough time to discuss that with you today, but I'm looking forward to next year, because we want to extend some of these KPIs and metrics to make it even more applicable to everybody. But I think these key metrics are really, really good guidance to justify your strategy going forward. Okay, so the next section that I want to discuss and highlight a few of the findings in is the operations of IT. Now, it is very important to not just look at how you support the business, but also how you run the business of IT. It is a department that needs to be managed, that needs to be ran in a way that actually produce efficient outcomes. So the two sections that I want to highlight, the first one is service management and the second one is risk and compliance. There's many more that we will discuss in the report, but these two are quite important, I think, and justify being highlighted. The first area that I want to highlight is performance commitment. It was actually really shocking for me to see that less than 14% have formal service level agreements in place. The rest of the participants indicated that they have nothing in place or only operational level agreements in place. Now, if you need to service your client, which is business, you should probably know what the commitment is and what will keep them happy, and they need to know what they will get for the service. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up being cross at one another the whole time or dissatisfied. So having proper service level agreements in place is one of the things that I really recommend IT departments actually look into. The second area is risk and compliance. Now, the majority of participants indicated that they have a proper risk register in place. But it was interesting to see that it varied in the way that it was kept up to date. Most of them said it was very infrequently kept up to date, others say more frequently. Now, we all know that more frequently sometimes means maybe twice a year. So, but at least everybody that participated have a risk register, which was a very good and positive thing for me. So similar to a risk register, we feel strongly that businesses have to keep, or IT departments have to keep, a compliance register. If we look at all of the compliance that's being forced down onto IT, such as POPI, it is just going to increase. And it's critical for the business and IT to sit around a table and to decide how they will manage the compliance risk. Speaking about POPI, it was interesting to see that almost 60% of the participants have decided to do the bare minimum to be compliant with POPI. And it is one of the strategies that might work. But we also feel that sometimes some of these compliance elements, such as POPI, will actually create an opportunity which can be exploited by business and IT to create more value for the business in the investment that they've made into IT and technology.
Good day. Thank you for your time. Today, I would like to give you a quick overview of the people and talent management data that we've got from the IT benchmark study that we've recently done in the agricultural sector. So we ask participants to rate 22 people management processes on how important it is to their business, as well as the maturity of that process within the company. 7 of these processes were rated as effective and in place, while all the others still show some room for improvement. This is a clear indication that there's still a lot of work to be done when it comes to people and talent management. Included in these 7 processes are 2 that are also ranked among the top 5 processes when it comes to importance. These are performance management, as well as organizational design, which refers to the way that the IT department is structured, as well as how well the jobs are defined. Now, performance management is the top ranked process when it comes to importance, and 71% of participants also indicated that this process is already in place and working in their organization. While these results sound really positive, I want to urge businesses to look a little bit deeper and not only ask themselves whether this process is in place, but also if this is working for them and delivering real value to the business. So performance management, if done correctly, is really the one process that can help your IT department be more effective, productive, and efficient. Skills development, specifically when it comes to technical skills, has been ranked as the second most important process for our participants. It is interesting that 58% of them say that they feel that this process can be done better in their organization. It is really important that as business leaders that we take the time to see what happened. There's major shifts within this industry. And the COVID pandemic have not only introduced challenges that we need to overcome, but also a variety of new opportunities that we can include within our training strategy. If I look, for instance, at just online work or remote working and also online training opportunities, we can now leverage those things to maybe get some training that you previously did not have access to. And also, in terms of remote working, you need to think of new strategies to incorporate things like peer coaching and on-the-job learning, which is so important within the IT space, where we have company-specific knowledge that need to be transferred within our IT teams. When it comes to employee engagement and wellness, one cannot deny the impact that the global pandemic had on these two processes within the business. 29% of participants do not consider employee engagement as one of the most important processes within their business, and only 14% of the participants rank wellness among the critical processes for them. Now, we urge you to really make this a strategic priority, not only to get an indication of how well people are coping and how productive they are, but also to come up with strategies on how to improve this in the future. The one concern comparing to last year is that succession planning is ranked much lower than our previous results. Also, only 14% of participants indicated that they already have a solution in place for this. Now, especially in the IT environment, it is crucial that we put something in place for the key positions within our teams, that we don't always have to go and look for people from the outside and deal with that big ramp-up period to get them up to speed with our processes. This is even more important if you have custom-built technology or even complex IT business designs in place. So thank you so much for joining me today for just this brief overview of the results. For more on this, please look at our detailed benchmark report. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everybody who tuned in today. And I hope that you've gained a lot of insight and new information that you can take back to your businesses. I also want to invite you to next year's 2022 Agri and Food Value Chain IT Benchmark Initiative. We are pleased to announce that we're going to extend the benchmark initiative into the food value chain side, and we're also going to make some quite exciting changes to how we collect the data. One of the big new changes will be that participants will have the option to opt in on various questionnaires, and you don't have to complete the full set of questions. You can select, for instance, cost only, or only cost and salary benchmarking, or whatever you are interested in, and you do not have to complete all of the questions. I think that will really make it easy for everybody to get a lot of benefit from the initiative. I also want to just share with you, for those of you who don't know, that we have a special participants report that we offer for all who participate and share their data in the process. So we're going to show an example of that report on screen now, but your data will be compared to the benchmark data in a very manageable and comprehensible format, and which makes it easy for you to digest and take to your board. So we really want to invite each and every one of you to participate in next year's initiative, but also please share this video and the insights that you've gained today with colleagues and friends in the industry, so that we can continue to improve this initiative and make it more valuable for everybody who participate and who wants to share and use the information. I look forward to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Cyril and Lida, for sharing the results with us. Please remember that you could order the 2021 Agri IT Benchmark Report online through the Grovation website or through the event platform. We're now about to have a short break, and after that break, we're going to have our first 2 breakaway sessions, and you can navigate your way to the breakaway sessions by clicking on the event homepage. Thank you so much for attending the event. I hope it was informative. And thanks to all our sponsors for making this event possible. Well, that's it from me, Mbali Noko. Until next time.
Have you ever wondered how the icons and visionaries of our time have changed the world as you see it today? The answer is simple. It's about exploring the potential in every possibility while always moving forward, so that when preparation meets opportunity, you realize success that makes a real difference. And it all starts by simply saying yes to your next. Your next step as you expand into new geographies. Your next digital innovation leap transforming how your business operates, or your next product line that you deliver to the market. That's why at CISPRO, we are committed to enabling our customers to say yes to their next in securing a digital future, one where we win together. As a trusted advisor, this is what inspires and drives us to provide support and guidance at every step of the way to empower you, the manufacturers and distributors who are changing the world. We make things possible by putting you in the best place to get to your next. CISPRO, say yes to next.